Welcome to episode 3 of the Inglorious Batters. Sorry, it's been a long day. Welcome to the Inglorious Batters podcast, you dirty batters. I am Jordan. I am here alongside with Rob and Adam as always. We are so excited for this special episode. I know we typically said that we are a bi-weekly show, but to fit into certain schedules, we decided to do a back-to-back episode. So technically, you're going to get 3 episodes in a row of our beautiful faces. Are you two excited to have 3 straight episodes of Inglorious Batters?
I'm thrilled. Personally, I don't know if my wife can say the same. Right now, we have a house full of sick kids, so they're like up and down every 5 minutes. They're in and out of bed. So, I don't know if she can say the same. She's going to be tuning in. So, she'll probably be in and out depending on when the kids get up. But I am me personally, very excited. Very excited.
Love to hear. How about you? Rob?
Oh, yeah, especially when I get back home. Still on vacation. Blessed to have a 2-week vacation and just worn out. Did Disney 2 days ago, and just I'm ready to get home.
You are ready to get home? You're ready to get back to 50-degree weather and rain?
No, see, I don't know if I'm ready for that, but I'm ready for things to just kind of slow down, not amusement park hopping. And then we did a spring training game a couple days back, so it's just we've been busy every single day. Just kind of ready for a chill day.
Tell us about that experience. I've never been to a spring training game. Have you been to one, Adam?
No, I've not. It's on the bucket list.
It was a bucket list item for me, for sure. I really wish I could have seen my Reds, but we came down here to visit Colin. Colin's one of our league mates, and he's currently going to school to be a physical therapist. So he's down here working with a team for that. And so we were blessed to be able to come down and visit him. And then, so close to Orlando, there's so many different ballparks. But with us staying close to Orlando, Detroit and Boston was the easiest game for us to get to. So it was pretty nice. I got to see Costas play take a couple at bats. He was my first baseman. So it was pretty nice for me to get some firsthand experience and eyeballs on that. So that was fun. Overall experience, it plays and it feels very much like a minor league ballpark and a minor league game.
That's so much fun.
Yeah, it's fun, and you can appreciate you appreciate the way that the gameplay is, because you're not there. You're not getting 6-7 innings out of the starting pitcher. They're on a pitch limit. You've got batters that are on at bat limits, and when they achieve certain things, then they pull them from the game. So you get to see a vast majority of the bench play too, which is really kind of a cool aspect. So I 100% feel like I have to go down to Arizona next year and catch a game a day for a full week just to have some fun with it.
Oh my! I envy that because that photo of you and your family was absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah,
you for sure have a very beautiful family.
Yeah, that's all my wife's doing. I had nothing to do with it. So my stance in that is you never credit the grocer for making the cake. It's always the baker. So I may have provided the ingredients, but she did all the work there. So
well, before we go to the main event, we just had our draft day. We're gonna go more into detail on that on next week's podcast, but. How much fun was that this year? I know you weren't there, Rob, but it's a blast every single year.
Yeah, it really is. And this year, your dad, thank you to Warren, who I'm sure is probably tuned in here tonight. Thank you to Warren for hosting. He did an amazing job. But yeah, it was, and it was different because this was our second year with 20 teams. With last year being the first, which was a huge change from the year before because we added 4 teams. And where last year, I think everyone was so gung-ho to spend money. This year, a little bit different vibe as far as the auction draft and the style, which we'll get more into. But overall, man, it was, it's always a blast. Seeing these guys, we really don't get together as a league very often, but seeing everybody was awesome, man. It was a great time. We missed Rob, but overall, awesome.
Yo, 7 seconds left, and Purdue's about to lose.
Oh, hell yeah.
Oh my gosh! I know we're a baseball podcast, but this is big news. This is
pretty big.
number one team to ever lose.
No, second, yeah.
Second.
The
but
second
I would also,
ever to lose.
Yeah, and I need to make a disclaimer. Matt Painter is not related to me if he loses. If he wins, he's my cousin. But
is he actually your cousin?
Nope.
Oh. Well, if they make this free throw, it's over. Game over. Oh my gosh! All right. Well, I'm turning
good.
This off.
Hey, for our Indiana viewers, since we are based out of Fort Wayne, maybe with the wrap up of that game, we'll get some viewers in because I know the IU game doesn't start for another 23 minutes.
Right. Mm-hmm. Well. How about this? How about we go into the main event, Adam? I feel like you have a personal connection with this person, from what I'm guessing. Could you, by chance, introduce the main event of this evening?
Yes, actually, and it actually ties into our March Madness theme because we have Matt Painter's son coming on the show actually tonight. No, actually, yeah, we actually our guest tonight is Alex Painter. We're super excited to have him on. He is my brother. He's my older brother. I don't know if I've mentioned on this show, but I'm one of 10. Alex and I are 2 of 10. So he's I'm third in line. He's second. He's right above me. Alex is, I guess, if you were to start to categorize everything or start to put titles on everything, he's a historian, a researcher, and a writer, a statistician. He's the manager of the Rose City Riveters fantasy baseball team. He's a husband. He's a father, most importantly. But we are so excited to have him on here because he does bring such a wide range of knowledge for our topic that we're talking about tonight, which is going to kind of focus on Negro League baseball. And I know it's been a topic in our, group message and everything that is that we often kind of go to for different things. And it's been, with culture and society and some of the different things that have happened, it's obviously something we see more frequently. It's more prevalent now than ever. So we are super excited to have him on. So what I did want to say, actually, let's just bring him on now before we get into that part of it.
Everybody, Alex Painter.
Hey,
Alex.
Happy Valentine's Day. Sorry, Happy Patty's Day, fellas. And did you guys hear? Love is in the air. It's not Valentine's Day though, but y'all hear Purdue's losing? And that's not our cousin, Matt Painter. He's not our cousin.
No, did Jordan announce that they lost? But did he get ahead of the?
It's official.
58.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say.
And my bracket's still good.
Yeah. Well, good.
I have all my Elite Eight is still available. Nobody in my Elite Eight have lost.
Man, well, I am really happy to be here, fellas. It's good to be able to talk baseball with a great collection of baseball minds. I know we're going to cover a lot of really awesome topics tonight. And, man, I'm just happy to be here. We're all making history today, this St. Patty's Day. Honored to be the first honorary bastard on the show. And really looking forward to digging in tonight, fellas.
Oh, well, we feel the same, man. We are
excited to have you.
Yes, we are.
No, I don't want you here.
All right. Well, see him, dude.
Honestly, yeah. Rob he just wants to get the hell home. He's just so over it.
No, it's always, but that's anytime you have a long vacation, no matter how cool your place that you are, you're always excited to get home, man. And then you realize just how bad your house smells to strangers,
Yeah.
When you come in and you're like, dude,
oh my God.
You're like, bro, this house smells funny. Is this how everybody thinks is this how everyone experiences our house?
It's so true, man.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
exactly.
I can remember those memories, even like being gone merely 6 to 8 hours, walking in the house, and I'm like,
it's like we don't have a dog. Why does it smell so bad in here?
One time when I was in my early 20s, I was living on my own, and I went with my family on vacation down here to Florida as well. Then to see my grandma. This was probably about 15 years ago, and it had to been about 10 years ago. Anyway. I accidentally left a bag of microwavable broccoli inside of the microwave. for the entire week that I was
You're
gone.
kidding.
Mercy.
No, dude. And then I didn't know what it was, dude. I was searching for like 3 days. Like, what the fuck is this stench? And where is it coming from? And then I went to make a baked potato and like, that's where it's coming from.
You went to make a baked potato?
Moldy ass broccoli bag sitting
that's rough.
in the microwave for
that's
2.5
super rough.
weeks.
Yeah, no, broccoli doesn't even smell particularly good when it's fresh and cooked,
Agreed.
which I've got a little situation going on in my fridge right now because, with St. Patty's Day, we made corned beef and cabbage. And let me tell you, that cabbage, potent.
Potent.
Might have to put another layer of aluminum foil over that thing. But so anyways, man. So yeah, Alex, thanks for taking the time to join us, to join our pirate ship of a podcast here that we are working to get off the ground. And we appreciate you bringing everything, all your knowledge to contribute to our efforts. So I guess to kind of get back into the brass tacks of things, I guess my first question is, and I guess more for our audience, I know you and Rob both can relate to the fact that you are both history buffs. In particular, you both have degrees in history.
Correct.
I guess what I where I wanted to start with this conversation is, where did your passion for history start for you? I know because it did start at such a young age. So where did that start, and where did your love for baseball history in particular come from, and kind of just your thirst for knowledge on, Negro League baseball and history in particular?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. I do take the study of history very, very seriously. Sure, it's something of a hobby of mine, but I have long thought that the study of history is a craft that you hone. And as Rob can attest, as you kind of pour over history, you start to build this timeline in your head. And in this timeline in your head, it becomes very densely textured and layered based on all of the things that you're learning, that you're reading, that you're kind of compartmentalizing. So that being said, Adam, you might remember, you probably do, we took a family trip to Gettysburg, and that was incredibly pivotal for me. And so I became essentially a Civil War buff right around 3rd, 4th grade. And that is when history became, I have a very much a one-track mind, perhaps even like an obsessive type mind. That is when I got really into history. And I don't know if I wasn't a great student. Adam can attest to this. I was never a very good student. And I don't know if I liked history because it was the only thing I was good at, or if I was good at it because I liked it. I don't really know. But, I spent years and years and years studying history, and would read anything I can get my hands on. In fact, I was one of those nerdy kids that on the weekends, I dress up like a Civil War soldier and schlep and march around in my wool, man, because that's how close to history I wanted to be. And
hey, Alex, you'd go all weekend eating nothing but hardtack.
Exactly, man. You ever survive on Rob? You get this. You ever survive on hardtack and salt pork and unclean water, man? And while sweating, you're just sweating more than you ever thought you could. The Civil War reenacting might just be for you, but no. So I've always enjoyed history, and if I were to really think about when baseball history in particular became a thing to me. And again, I don't want to go too inside with this story, but Adam probably remembers we used to go to our Aunt Jola and Uncle Doug's house, and for like a week over the summer. And I don't know if you remember this, Adam. They had a dog. It wasn't a small dog, or it wasn't a big dog. It was actually quite a small dog. Pardon me, I know this is a family show. It scared the shit out of me, not because it was scary, but because it would jump up on me, and I wasn't about that. So because I was so afraid of this dog, I locked myself in their upstairs loft because I was so terrified of this dog. And I was not particularly young at this time. But they had one videotape up there, and it was Field of Dreams with Kevin Costner. And so all of a sudden I started watching this movie, and I watched it over and over and over again. And I grew such a deep appreciation for guys like Shoeless Joe Jackson. And even though he played in exactly one game, who could forget Dr. Archibald Graham? And really what that movie did was infuse me. Yes, absolutely. It infused me with this romanticism surrounding baseball in particular, and I could not get enough of it. And I started developing such a soft spot for all, like, that whole movie. But if you remember, when young Archie Graham, he comes onto the baseball field and he says, he's looking, he's like, that's Smokey Joe Wood and Mel Ott and Gil Hodges. And if you go in my basement, I've got a Smokey Joe Wood autograph. I've got Gil Hodges cards everywhere. I got Mel Ott cards. Like, it's like just so funny how you realize how pivotal of a thing that was. And so then as I kind of got a little bit older, especially post-college, I studied history and politics in college, and I just really had a great time. Again, the only classes I was good at. So I was a good fit for a history major. But that's when, as you kind of start to really dig into baseball, it's a little bit more about just the stats, the players, the teams, the managers, the stadiums, when you can really start properly contextualizing baseball into American history. And you realize that they're flawed, they're spectacular, they're depressing, they're breathtaking. And the story of America and the story of baseball are both just like to where they started and to where they went, completely unforeseen. And so I kind of went about it to burrow as deeply as I could the history of baseball into the history of America, because these things, they run in parallel. And baseball intersects with every major event in American history, every major social movement, everything. Whether you're talking about racial history, which is where I've really kind of dug in myself, or gender history, labor history, the world wars, it does not matter. Baseball plays a role in all of these things and the birth of modern American popular culture. So anyways, when it comes to Negro Leagues and baseball history, I got a prop. It's my only one. I got this book from Santa Claus. It's called Baseball More Than 150 Years. And it's just your basic chronology. But I remember I read the whole thing, and I was most enamored with the Homestead Grays, Buck Leonard and Josh Gibson. And I don't know if y'all remember starting lineup figures, but they from the 90s, they made a Buck Leonard and a Josh Gibson. I went to Toys R Us and bought them both because I thought they were so cool. But it was Buck Leonard and Josh Gibson and Satchel Paige and Cool Papa Bell that just really birthed. Those were kind of my entrance into Negro Leagues baseball, and I got really into it about 7 or so years ago when I started researching another Negro Leaguer named Luke Easter, who later played for the Cleveland Indians. So, I mean, ever since then, I'd say for the last 7-8 years, I've just been full tilt baseball.
Absolutely, man. I actually, I think you probably can attest to it. As we've gotten older, our love and appreciation for the starting lineup figures has grown.
Oh yeah.
And then you start to realize, damn, these are actually, some of these carry quite a little price tag to them.
They do.
I chewed the hands off of mine,
Yeah.
I never had one. So
Jordan, you might skew a little young. Yeah, it's okay. Keep your youth, man. We're secretly jealous.
Yeah.
After going to Disneyland, I'm jealous. God dang, man, I'm sore.
Sore and probably quite a bit more less coin in your pocket.
Oh yeah.
They print money. It's just it's insane.
They're whatever they like. They have it almost figured out completely.
Yeah,
they're gonna run the world. Millennial moms.
Oh yeah. So Alex, one of the other things I guess that I mentioned in your intro, I mentioned that you were a writer, an author. You have several books published out now, but with another one you're working on currently.
Yes.
I guess, and without getting too in depth, your topics of your books are relatively specific,
Right, yeah.
which and actually things that there's not a lot of volume as far as what's currently out there to consume on the topics that you've written about. So I guess my question that I had is, could you tell us a little bit about, involved in the book writing process, what that process looks like a little bit. How do you identify some of these topics that you've written, whether it's books or blogs, or you're super active on a lot of different things. But what does that process look like? How do you begin finding resources? How do you find these topics?
That's another great question. I really appreciate that. Baseball, if you were to think about it like a globe, and I'm sorry, not another crummy allegorical metaphor here, but if you were to think of baseball as a globe, Major League Baseball, which I know countless people devote thousands of hours researching. To me, if baseball is a globe, the planet Earth, Major League Baseball is the crust. So there is this whole underbelly of how baseball created the fabric of America and all these small towns and all these small cities. These stories, so many of them, just have not been told. They're actually not as hard to find as you might think. Now, granted, it does take some diligent research and some kind of just nose to the grindstone digging. But, I specialize in Negro Leagues baseball history. I won't go as far as to say that I'm a historian, but or an expert, pardon me, even, but an expert or a historian even. I had those backwards. But, if you know where to look, then they're going to start really presenting themselves. So for this new book, it's called Fastballs and Fence Rows, Narratives of Indiana's Negro Leagues Baseball History, because personally, I'm wearing an Indianapolis Clowns hat and an Indianapolis Clowns shirt, mostly because my good pal Jay Valentine is here with us tonight. He was the center fielder for the Indianapolis Clowns, 1977 and 1978. But I think Indiana is, when people think of Negro Leagues baseball, they think of Pennsylvania, rightfully so. They'll think of New York, they'll think of Ohio, but Indiana played such a critical role in the Negro Leagues. So what my newest work, which I plan to come out early next year, I tried to localize that impact through storytelling, and while incorporating bits about baseball history, bits about Negro Leagues history, and bits about the city or town or municipality, whatever it is themselves. So but I promise you, it's not magic. It's really just diligent research, going through old newspapers and taking copious notes. And when I'm looking at an old newspaper, my one of my mantras is look left, look right, because you have the article you want. Look left, look right, build more context around it. So, like, for instance, one of the early cities in Indiana that had light baseball game with lights was South Bend. So as you're looking up games that were played at Old Lippincott Park between the Kansas City Monarchs and the Studebaker Auto semi-pro team, look left, look right, man. Like, the Studebaker Auto Company was the absolute lifeblood of South Bend. And the Studebaker Auto, the year that they played this game with the lights, these newfangled lights, they were producing the Rockney for old Knute Rockney. So it's about finding these stories, but also creating this, again, I overuse the word of context. So I try really hard to just find things that maybe haven't been touched on and then really dig in. Because if you're diligent, you'll find the story there.
Yeah, Alex, it's funny because when you say that, I can't imagine the research process when you are looking at some of these old newspaper articles, because hanging down here in my man cave, I have a front page of the Cleveland Plain Dealer from not entirely sure the year off the top of my head. I guess it'd be like 1912, 11.
With Addie Jones. Yeah.
So, obviously well over 100 years old. And when I look at just the front page of it, the amount of stories they cram on the front page, there must be 50 stories on just the front page. They're short little stories, but my goodness, I can't imagine.
To your point, Adam, so I did this history of the Negro Leagues in Richmond, Indiana. It was called Black Ball in the Hoosier Heartland. And it's the one that people kind of, I'm not trying to gas myself up here, but, here locally, people are aware of this book, and they're becoming more aware of this history. And, people are like, you're the baseball guy. And I kind of wear it proudly. I'm like, yeah, I'm the baseball guy. But the fact of the matter is, your daily editions, even in mid-sized cities, used to be 32 pages long, and they were so long, and they covered if two teams got together over a few beers and over a few beers at lunch, two factory teams, they would report the final score. So I appreciate that, Jim. But the fact is they're there. The stories are there, and much was reported on for a long time. And so it's really just about being kind of organized and kind of committed to telling the story and kind of putting all the pieces together. But you're right. And sometimes you got to kind of cut through some period lingo. And you're like, I'm trying to think of a good one that's like kind of appropriate. I'll have one here soon.
No big deal. We'll circle back around. Rob or Jordan, you guys got anything for Alex? Or I mean, I've got a huge list, but I don't want to
Yeah, as in when you did conduct a lot of your research, I know how tough it can be, and just access to the different databases that it requires to get a sufficient amount to be able to connect the dots. What did you find yourself gravitating towards outside of newspaper publications or even just other various databases that you would use to find such specific content that is on something that was marginally probably underreported for the racial tensions that the country was in? So
absolutely. And when you're constructing stories about baseball, I stole this from a guy named Ted Knorr. He's with the Society for American Baseball Research. But you need to have three pillars. You need to have statistics because it's baseball. You need statistics, right? But you also need to have opinions. What did people think of that player? What did that contemporary player think of? What did the player's contemporaries think of him? So you need statistics, you need opinions, then you need legends. What do we think of him now? And these are the three tent poles of a memorable baseball player. So let me give an example. Adam's tired of hearing about this guy. His name's Bill Holland. Okay, he was a pitcher, and he is very, very important because he pitched for almost 20 years. And I got really into him because I discovered this black team here in Richmond. They were called the Richmond Giants. And Bill Holland, as a 17-year-old in 1918, started for this team, and he won a couple games. They plucked him off the sandlots of Indianapolis. And then Bill Holland goes on to be one of the best Detroit Stars, which was the Detroit team in the Negro National League. He was the absolute best New York black Yankee, but he was the first black pitcher to start a game at Yankee Stadium in 1930. So statistics, I have found he's won 285 games and counting. Opinions. Jeez. This was a guy that they nicknamed Devil. Yeah, he was fantastic. And these are just ones I found in the last just few weeks. I guarantee there's way more out there. Opinions. Bill Holland was a very, very quiet guy. He would pitch, and he would pitch all the time. He'd pitch every other day if he could. And then he'd go home. He was a family man. But when he was between the chalk lines, they called him Devil because he was the most competitive. He was the worst loser. He punched a umpire in Muncie right in the face when he was just a kid, 18-year-old kid, because he didn't like the balls and strikes call. He'd fight teammates right there in the dugout. He'd pick fights with guys who were much larger than he was. He was 5'8", 180 pounds. So they said he was the toughest loser. He said, his contemporary said, if I'm picking a pitcher, if I need one pitcher for one game, I'm not picking Satchel Paige. I'm picking Bill Holland because it might take him 20 innings, but he's going to beat you. And so they raved about him. His teammates and the people he played against raved about him. Cool Papa Bell said he was one of the three best pitchers of the Negro Leagues. And legend, third tent pole, first pitcher ever to start a game at Yankee Stadium. And yet this is a guy that I'd venture to say that 98% of baseball fans have no idea that the man existed. Yet he pitched from 1918 through 1941. And when he retired in 1941, he was convinced that the baseball leagues were never going to integrate. I mean, he was making a 1/6 of the Major League Baseball salary, and he didn't think that was an institution or something that was going to change. So I'm sorry, Rob. I don't think I actually answered your question. I think I just really want to talk about Bill Holland.
You did. I mean, you definitely approached your pillars to research, which is hugely helpful, especially for people who don't necessarily know how to get started in researching something like that. I mean,
yeah, and look at the guy's statistics. And for Negro Leaguers, sometimes you got to actually go out there and find them. Look at but I tell you what, the Negro Leaguers did, they talked about each other a lot. And so figure out what that player's contemporaries say about them. And then now, how do we view that player looking back? And so those are, like I said, I pirated them from Mr. Ted Knorr. But these are the three things. Once I heard that a few years ago, I was like, yes, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Alex, and I guess kind of just piggybacking off like just the whole research question and talking about, you're talking about Bill Holland and his nearly 300 wins, which is obviously kind of like that
magic number, man.
That magic number for pitchers. The thing I wanted to ask you about as it relates to stats, I guess more recent news as it relates to the MLB and Negro League baseball, they have now included all of the Negro League stats and records into the MLB records.
Right.
So I guess my question to you is, I know you've done some background work on that and the research of that. Tell us a little bit about that first and foremost. And I guess if we can get back in a decent time, the second part of that question would be, what kind of impact now does including these stats leave on the records, and how may that affect some Hall of Fame votes moving forward?
I would also like to add to that question.
Please.
When will Josh Gibson be the home run king?
No, that's a great question.
The man basically hit 800 home runs from what people are saying.
Right.
And he took offense when people called him the Black Babe Ruth, because he said Babe Ruth wishes that he was me.
Yeah. I mean, everyone who knows their baseball knows that Babe Ruth was just the white Josh Gibson. No, you've hit the nail on the head there, Jordan. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
These are great questions. And I honestly have I found myself being at the right place at the right time. So a couple things here, and I'm sorry, I won't drag this one out, even though I probably have the ability to. Anyone who is interested in Negro League's baseball statistics must go to a website called seamheads.com. Seamheads.com is the most comprehensive Negro League's baseball database for statistics. And that is not just, that's going to be statistics Negro Leaguers against other Negro Leaguers. Okay. It's not going to include the statistics. Like, for instance, I said Bill Holland has 285 wins. Those are the wins I have found. But Seamheads has him at 116, which is still a substantial amount. 9th most in Negro League's history, by the way. But those are going to be 9th most. Yeah.
Dang.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That kind of blew my mind.
Yeah. Well, because in Seamheads, they're only counting these Negro Leaguers against what they deem to be other major league competition. Right. So like I said, I've been at the right place at the right time. I'm good pals with the guys from Seamheads. We're thought partners. I've actually submitted a lot of biographical information for the database. So, and fortunately that kind of put me in a position where when Seamheads, which was the database that then fused with Baseball Reference, which we all know and love. So when Baseball Reference incorporated the Negro League stats, they took them directly from Seamheads. So I actually got a phone call. I got an email that they wanted me to help with quality control as those things integrated. So, I mean, like, to be asked to do that was just absolutely incredible. So the fact is, I don't know what it's going to look like for voting. Now, I will tell you that this past year, they put 2 guys in who just desperately need to get in. And that is, one was Bud Fowler. Yeah, 19th century baseball pioneer. And I tell you what, man, Bud will make your heart hurt, because that guy gave his absolute life for baseball. He was the first black professional. He played for a minor league team in the 1870s. He broke a rib in Indianapolis while sliding into second base. And that actually caused all kinds of issues that ultimately led to his demise 11 years later. And he was absolutely penniless. He was He was absolutely desolate when he died. And I was able to find some letters that he wrote to officials in baseball because he had no money. And he was desperately writing, trying to solicit money from guys like Charles Comiskey and Albert Spalding, just like, guys, please, I have given my life to this game. Can you help me? Like, I need treatment. I'm sick. I'm miserable. And unfortunately, he died before some of the letters were even delivered. So it allowed Bud Fowler to get in. And then it also allowed a guy named Buck O'Neill to get in. And a lot of people are familiar with Buck because, I mean, and I hate to be sacrilege, but I'm sorry, Jesus of Nazareth, Mahatma Gandhi, Buck O'Neill. These are the people with the most humility in history, in my opinion. So I don't know how it's going to impact the voting. I don't know how it's going to impact, but however, the legitimacy of these Negro Leagues being considered major leagues is absolutely huge. Think about it this way. Now that they're on Baseball Reference, now I don't know if you're all familiar with Baseball Reference and their black ink when you lead a league in a category.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, that's amazing. So now if you go to Oscar Charleston's page, who was a Baseball Hall of Famer elected in 1976, so he was an early Negro League Baseball Hall of Famer, it will show you the truth. He's one of the best hitters of all time, and he won 3 Triple Crowns in a span of 5 years. That's how good he was. Yeah, absolutely absurd. So, yeah, that's a great question. I've just been fortunate that I've put myself out there enough, and I guess some people think that I have some people probably think I'm smarter than I am, and have allowed me to really have some really neat opportunities, particularly with these statistics and being able to get really in on the ground level with them. And then, Josh Gibson. Let's talk Josh Gibson.
The greatest of all time.
Yeah, you could certainly make that argument. Josh Gibson, here's your stat for you, Jordan, just in case you're ever curious or if it ever comes up at trivia night at your local watering hole. Josh Gibson played in the Negro National League 14 years. He led him in home runs for 11 of those 14 years. I mean, the guy, his Hall of Fame plaque says that he hit nearly 800 home runs. Unfortunately, that number is not corroborated, but we do know that nobody in the Negro Leagues, he was feared. And there's another guy I'm quite fond of. His name's Sam the Jet Jethro, which if I have a minute here later, I'd love to talk about him. He's a guy who said, if someone told me Josh Gibson hit the ball a mile, I'd believe him. So I've always liked
the longest home run on record, like at 600 plus feet. So
I'm going to tie this all together here real quick. He hit a ball that reputedly left Yankee Stadium. Or it was supposedly 505 feet. And the most impressive part of that is when that happened, he was still like a teenager in his early 20s. I can't remember, because he did that to a New York New York Lincoln Giants pitcher, named Connie Rector. The next guy to pitch the following day was Bill Holland. And Bill's like, Josh never hit the ball out of the infield on me. So, Josh could hit the ball farther than anyone thought conceivable at that time. He was an absolute powerhouse.
So this ties in with my next question though. So with knowing so much about the Negro League and everything, and obviously we all know the great Jackie Robinson,
right?
One of the best ever in that category. But if you were to compare him to the competition that he was with, he wasn't even the best player in the league. And I know like one of the main reasons is because he's able to keep his composure better than most other people. But how do you think it would have gone if I could be getting my timelines mixed up? Josh Gibson was playing around the time when he got called up, correct?
So this is where it gets a little interesting. Yeah. Josh Gibson died in January of 1947. Okay. So he was 35 years old. And so some of his pals always said by that time, Jackie had signed with the Dodgers, and he spent the 1946 season with the Montreal Royals of the International League. They intentionally, a lot of the Negro Leaguers who broke into baseball later, like your Larry Doby, didn't have the chance to play in the minor leagues. They went from the Negro Leagues right to the major leagues. Jackie, this is something that I think 42 does really well. Jackie had that runway, and they shipped him north of the border because they were just a little bit more tolerant in Canada at that time. But the fact of the matter is Josh Gibson died before Jackie made his debut. He died at age 35.
So sad.
Yeah, he was very, very young. And unfortunately, he had, some folks think it was a brain aneurysm or a brain bleed, but Josh Gibson's behavior got very erratic towards the end of his life. And so poor guy was probably suffering immensely. And so eventually he did succumb to his illness. But a lot of Josh Gibson's friends always said that he died of a broken heart because he wasn't picked first. But when in reality, it's like Jackie was chosen for a lot of tangible and intangible reasons. And the fact that the first guy they picked, think about the pressure. You couldn't fail. You couldn't be the first guy to do that and fail. And he was such a phenomenal athlete that I think it was reasoned. And he was married and he served in the armed forces, that they're like, this guy's well-rounded enough that he can kind of handle it. He's kind of the whole package. And don't make no mistake, Jackie was a fantastic athlete. I mean, he was an All-American at UCLA in football. And
he was a four-sport athlete there, wasn't he?
Yeah, he also played track and field, didn't he?
Yeah, and basketball. He was in baseball, of course. He was a four-sport athlete. He's actually the last UCLA athlete to letter in four sports.
Of course he was.
He was a absolute animal. And so, but a good question though, Jordan. Josh Gibson slots in right on the cusp of integration, but unfortunately, he never got to see it.
So what player would have been better than Jackie in that situation? Well, obviously, I don't think anybody would have been better than Jackie in that situation, but like better skill-wise at baseball, who would have been the pinnacle Negro player to take up that mantle to be literally like the MVP year one?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's true. If given a proper runway, he's in the Baseball Hall of Fame, so this is kind of a cop-out. He also served in the armed forces as well. So kind of a cop-out. Monty Irvin. Monty Irvin played with the Newark Eagles, and he was a teammate actually of Larry Doby. And he would have been, I think, if it were me and it wasn't Jackie, and we know Jackie worked out swimmingly for the Brooklyn Dodgers, Monty Irvin signed with, he eventually made his debut with the New York Giants. And he was a fantastic player. He's one of the best Negro Leaguers of the 1940s. He was really well adjusted and really well suited to do probably similar things Jackie did, albeit not in the infield. He was an outfielder. But Monty Irvin, easily.
Okay. I was always curious on that.
Yeah. All right, Alex. So, we're talking Josh Gibson, obviously one of the more well-renowned, well-known Negro League players. I guess, and I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here. So, and this was probably going to be hard for you to do, but, obviously without fail, there are going to be players that are forgotten. Mm-hmm. Just as you've talked about your research process, there's just in certain aspects, there's just not a lot of information to be had on some of these different leagues that were, functioning one year and then defunct the next. And, so I guess if you could narrow it down to one, if you could put a plug in for one forgotten Negro League legend in your mind, who would that be?
Oh man. Okay. No, I appreciate this question.
He's already trying to run his fingers through his hair, just trying to figure it out here.
I'm buying time. Classic tactic. So I would say so there are guys that are forgotten. Luke Easter is a hero of mine. I think he's forgotten. He played in the Negro Leagues and he played in Major League Baseball. However, one guy that I think needs to be remembered. Oh, dang. Dude, okay. I'm going to say a couple names really quick, and then I'm going to settle on one.
You can have a couple OLLs.
Appreciate. I appreciate. There's a guy named Cannonball Dick Redding, though. He threw straight smoke. People were just scared shitless of this guy. He had the best fastball in the Negro Leagues. Cannonball Dick Redding. Okay, that's one. Another, though, is Bill Holland, of course. But however, there's a third baseman named Oliver Marcel. They nicknamed him the Ghost. He was an incredible ball player. Actually, one of the guys that Bill Holland picked a fight with, who was much larger than Bill Holland. But Oliver Marcel was absolutely fantastic. But if you're those guys, actually in the grand scheme of Negro Leagues, are still pretty well known. Underneath that, there's a guy named Chino Smith. Okay. He died very young while he was playing. He only played 5 years in the Negro Leagues. I'm convinced that there were probably few better pure hitters of the Negro Leagues. His name was Chino Smith. His name's Charles, but he had like kind of squinty eyes, so they called him Chino. But please, Chino Smith is one that we really need to make sure we got to prop this guy up. He was so stinking good. He hit everybody. He hit everything. And he hit it to all fields. And he'd rope something down the line. He'd drive it up the middle for a single, and he would just hit the ball plumb out of the stadium. So he was great.
Awesome, man. Actually, to be honest with you, that name doesn't ring a bell in my head. So that's exactly what I asked you to do. I mean, I'm not a savant by any stretch, but I'm like, oh.
I'm trying to connect these names to the brackets that we have every year to figure out who the greatest of all time is. And then I was like, I have never heard of this guy before.
John, I promise you, Chino Smith. Hey, George, head over to Seam Heads and check this guy out. But I will tell you the best Negro League. I'll give you two names though, and this is, to me, it's not even disputable. The best pitcher of the Negro Leagues, Satchel Paige. The best hitter and the fielder of the Negro Leagues, Oscar Charleston, without a doubt.
Oscar Charleston was a dog.
Yeah, he was absolutely a dog. And sorry, I feel like there's a plane overhead or a helicopter. Sorry, can you guys hear that?
A little bit. It's not terrible.
Okay, good deal.
Trust me, we've had worse.
Okay, awesome. So I was just telling this to Adam the other day when we were talking about equities and inequities, and Oscar Charleston was the best baseball player of his generation, in my opinion. Bill James will tell you he's the third best baseball player of all time. When he passed away, and he passed away very suddenly in 1954, he was actually fairly young. He was still in his 50s. For a guy who was an internationally renowned baseball player, perhaps the best pure hitter, not named Ty Cobb, of the first 4 decades of the 20th century. If you look at his death certificate, his occupation, I shit you not, is baggage handler. And I think that's an absolute travesty. But Oscar Charleston was a 5-tool player, and he was mean as hell, and he would fight you for everything. He fought for every inch, and that's how he played. And that's so much, it's like, gosh, so many of these players had that attitude because, quite frankly, it was necessary, with everything they had to go through with their, even just the travel, obviously, and their families and everything else. I could not even imagine. And if I just may really quickly here, because you bring up a great point, I am first in line sometimes romanticizing the Negro Leagues. And sometimes I have to check myself because this was not an easy existence. When the Homestead Grays in 1930, they're the best baseball team, one of the best baseball teams in the nation in 1930 and 1931. They traveled in 2 Buicks, and they all traveled in 2 cars. That's how they got around. It was a hard life. It was a hard life rolling into a town and not knowing exactly who would serve you, where you could pump your gas, where your next meal would come in. It was not easy. And so I give these guys a heck of a lot of credit, just not only for the accommodations were lackluster, and they still did their thing. And some of them were just mind-blowingly good. And Oscar and Satch were one of them. And if I may say really quickly, Adam, you might appreciate this. I mean, Satchel Paige was 42 when he became a rookie with the Cleveland Indians with Bill Veck's outfit and Lou Boudreau's outfit. Bill Veck brings him in, who's the owner of the Indians. He's kind of a showman in his own right. And so Satch comes in for his tryout, and Lou Boudreau is the shortstop, but he's a player manager that year in 1948. And he has Satch throw some pitches, and he's like, Lou Boudreau's like, is this guy a sideshow? Has he got anything left in the tank? Because he'd been pitching for a hell of a long time at that point. And so Satch throws about 12, 15 pitches, and Boudreau's like, okay, yeah, he can still throw. He's like, hey, Satch, hey, run around the warning track for me. I'll see you run a little bit. And Satch says, okay, Mr. Lou, and he starts running, and then he gets about 15, 20 steps. And he's like, Mr. Boudreau, if it's all the same, I don't really like to run. and then Boo was like, Lou Boudreau was like, all right, Satch. But August 20th, 1948, he makes his home debut at Cleveland Municipal Stadium. His first home start. 80,000 people packed into the stadium to watch this guy because they had to see him. And Bill Veeck said, like, shit, I ran out of hot dogs. I ran out of beer. He's like, if I would have known, I would have really had all this. So, the guy was a well-known entity when he reached the major leagues. And it was just, he threw a shutout on August 13th. It was on the road in Chicago. He threw a shutout at Comiskey. And then he threw a shutout a week later. So he's still the oldest player to throw back-to-back shutouts. 42, Satchel Paige. Yeah, so his first starts were incredible.
Well, so we have a question from one of our viewers. Obviously, it's a very well-known viewer. It's Jim. The question is, which Negro player and which MLB player from before 1946 could have played in and enjoyed the same amount of success in the other league?
So if I'm understanding the question correctly, it's which
is it that they could swap places and still?
Yeah, basically, I think.
Hopefully I'm understanding this question correctly, Jim. So it is.
You want us to put it back up there for you, Alex?
If you don't mind, I'm sorry. No, all good. Which Negro League players and which MLB players from before 1946 could have played in and enjoyed the same amount of success in the other league? Yeah. Because that's a good question. You're like, oh, these black players would have been fantastic in the white leagues. Which white players would have been great in the black leagues? And this is a cop-out answer, Jim, and I hope I'm answering the question as you're asking it. Ted Williams. Ted Williams was the best pure white hitter. And here's what, and I'm plugging Ted Williams very specifically for this question because when Ted Williams was inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame, and you can still retrieve the audio to this day, he didn't take the time to talk about himself. He didn't take the time to talk about his accomplishments. And I know we know some Hall of Famer speeches where you're like, okay, dude, we get it. You think you're great. We think you're great. That's why you're here. Ted Williams took the time to talk about, hey, I can't be in here if we don't have these black baseball players in here too.
Really?
Absolutely. So that is actually when people started talking more about, this was in the early 70s. There were no black baseball players in the Hall of Fame.
I remember hearing that about Ted Williams, about how he was a huge ally, at a time when there really was no outspoken,
No. And honestly, if that hadn't happened, the study of Negro Leagues baseball would not look the same today. It wouldn't, because at that point, people are like, oh, Teddy Ballgame is saying this, and everyone knows when Ted said something, he meant it. And not to mention, nobody knew the art of hitting better than Ted Williams. Nobody.
Oh, no.
And so once he said that changed the game dramatically. And then that allowed for guys, in the 70s, you had Satchel Paige get in, Josh Gibson and Buck Leonard got in, Cool Papa Bell got in. A guy named John Henry Lloyd, or Pop Lloyd, was a fantastic player too. He got in, but then and Monty Irvin eventually got, that really started the ball for these guys. And it's because of Ted Williams. I mean, not solely, but so I got to give praise to Ted there.
Oh, I did not know that Ted Williams was that prominent in Negro baseball.
Let me just say it another way too. I don't know if y'all knew this. I'm a card head. I collect cards, baseball cards. And so in the early 90s, Ted Williams launched his own baseball card company, Ted Williams Baseball Card Company. He included Negro Leaguers in his baseball card, his base set. Nobody did that. Nobody else was doing that thing.
That is awesome. He literally put his reputation on the line back in the day. That sounds horrible to say in reality, but like he saw talent and then was like, yeah, these guys are good enough to be recognized as being one of the greatest baseball players ever. We have Gibson was never given a shot in the MLB, and if he was probably going to win MVP literally every single year of his career.
Right.
Like as a catcher. That's the craziest part about it. And his defense was locked down too. I love Josh Gibson.
He was fantastic. He was absolutely fantastic. And these guys are all worth mentioning. And I mean, and there's famous ones like Josh Gibson, like Cool Papa Bell, like Satch, and for good reason too. I mean, but like there's just, again, I always think of like the Negro Leaguers. You have the uber famous, and then you have like the pretty famous. And then again, we're talking Chino Smith. You got like 60. What does Brad Pitt say is Billy Bean? We got 60 pounds or 60 feet of crap. And then we got these guys. And that doesn't mean they're any less deserving.
You mentioned Chino Smith and I'm thinking, well, hell, he's not that much unknown because he just signed a big deal in the offseason to be the quarterback of the Seattle Seahawks.
I was thinking the same thing. I was like, Geno Smith that was in the Negro
I apologize if I didn't enunciate properly.
No. It took a little bit. When you kept on saying Chino, I was like, Chino, not Geno, not Geno Smith. Got it.
Oh man, right, exactly.
So Alex, sorry, we're going to be bouncing around here because I know we're getting to almost the hour mark. But we've got some more questions we want to ask you. And you mentioned at the start of the episode, you mentioned Jay Valentine is in the house.
Yes,
and so I kind of wanted to ask a question that will relate, but. To preface the question, we see kind of this shift in how we view the game, how fans want to consume the game. A lot of it, is just the average age of the MLB is so old, but, we've seen kind of the emergence of this Savannah Bananas thing.
Oh, yeah.
And kind of some of the different things they're doing to try to kind of bring a younger audience into the game. And it just kind of made me think of the Indianapolis Clowns and some of what I've read in your books and our discussions. And I don't want to say that the Indianapolis Clowns were just, like with these gimmicks because they were damn good baseball players.
Sure.
But they did bring a level of showmanship and entertainment to the field that really was kind of unparalleled. And I just wanted to know if maybe you could tell us a little bit about the Indianapolis Clowns since you are, of course, decked out.
Yes, I think... I show my huge bias here now, granted, but I think the Indianapolis Clowns are one of the most culturally significant teams in baseball history. A lot of people don't realize this, but in 1952, they had this young guy named Hank Aaron on the team. Hank Aaron started as I was like, Jordan, no. Okay, good. You about gave me an episode.
Hey,
no,
he got second greatest of all time in our bracket. So it must deserved Willie Mays and Hank Aaron.
Yes. Well, and if you take away Hank Aaron has 755 home runs. If you take away Hank Aaron's 755 home runs, he still has 3,000 hits, which is awfully impressive.
That's stupid.
That's just
insane.
I about dropped the holiest of holies, but that's ridiculous. So the Clowns, here's what people don't know about the Clowns is just how long they lasted. And they were initially kind of considered the Harlem Globetrotters of the baseball diamond, rightfully so. The most famous Globetrotter of the 40s and 50s was a guy named Goose Tatum. Goose Tatum was this insanely athletic. He was about 6'6", but his arm span, his wingspan, they said was an equivalent of like essentially a 7-footer. He had these enormous arms. He was a great basketball player. He was an absolute showman. And he was the first baseman of the Indianapolis Clowns. So not only was he on the Globetrotters, he was on the Clowns as well. So it wasn't uncommon that, Goose would get in the batter's box. He'd let the pitcher groove two by him for 2 quick strikes. He'd put his bat down. He'd get out of the batter's box and he'd say like a prayer, just pantomiming a prayer. And then he'd get up there and pop. He'd knock one, sometimes he'd knock a home run. Sometimes he'd just lace a double, whatever. But So yeah, the Clowns were the first ones because they realized that was important to their vitality. It was important to their sustainability, not only play excellent baseball, but to kind of have a show along with it. And so the Clowns started it in the 40s. Well, their origins go back to the 30s, but they go through the 40s, they go through the 50s, they go through the 60s. This is long after the Negro Leagues are finished. They kind of committed themselves to a sheerly itinerant barnstorming existence. They didn't have a home field. And so my pal Jay Valentine joins the team in the mid to late 70s. And, he told me, he's part of the act. He's, if you don't know Jay, I strongly suggest, we had some long conversations that are here on YouTube. He is an absolute charismatic guy. He's one of my favorite guys. I cannot wait to see him again. But he played center field for the Clowns from 77 through 78. And so you got paid your meal money, as he says. So you take that money and you'd, get food with it. But if you're a part of the show, so if you were like charismatic and talented and theatrical enough, you'd get a couple extra bucks a day. So my pal Jay was part of the show. And so he would do like the skits in between innings. And so again, what's absolutely remarkable is that the Clowns lasted through the 1988 season. So jeez. Adam, the year you were born, buddy.
That's insane.
Yes. And they continued, and
what league were they playing in?
They weren't, Rob. They
just an independent ball club running around.
And imagine this one. Imagine this one, dude. Jay, I love this guy. Jay's telling me about their accommodations, and he's like, Alex, we traveled in a checker aero bus, and I'm like, okay, I'm like, a checker aero bus, I don't know what the hell that is. And he looks at me, he's like, I shit you not, an airport limo. And I was like, no. And he's like, Jay told me, he's like, we must have had 500,000 miles on this thing. And he said, we're all driving one day and we're going down the road and, we're heading to Salina, Kansas. And we see one of our tires drive past us and it's on fire. These guys absolutely scrapped to make a living playing the game. And, to Jay's credit, he played collegiate baseball for Bob Serve. So Jay was absolutely bona fide. Bob Serve happened to be the roommate of Mickey Mantle and Roger Maris in 1961. He was kind of the guy that kind of kept both of them on the level during the home run chase, and he was Jay's college coach. So these guys for the Clowns, I mean, they were not only just supremely talented baseball players, they really committed themselves to being entertaining and in between innings doing a skit. But also just like when we're talking about the fact that this couldn't have been easy. I've asked Jay probably on 3 separate occasions, like, Jay, what did you guys do for so many hours staring at each other in this close quarters? And if you don't know what I'm saying, look it up on Google. Just put in checker aero bus. You'll get the vibe quick. It was so anyways, these guys, the Indianapolis Clowns, are so important to baseball history. The last team that Oscar Charleston managed before he passed away, he was managing the Indianapolis Clowns. They were the first team Hank Aaron played for. They were the last of the Barnstormers. So go Clowns. And God love Jay Valentine. He's one of my favorite people.
Alex, if you don't mind here real quick, we're going to switch.
Yes.
We're going to switch gears. We wanted to plug our head sponsor here for season 1 of Inglorious Batters podcast, which is of course Old Fort Baseball. And I know you're familiar with Old Fort Baseball, but for those of you that are not, part of what they do is through their brand and apparel, they redesign, and kind of reimagine different historical teams to Fort Wayne, and they have different collections for those teams. They have, of course, the Fort Wayne Daisies, and they have the Fort Wayne Generals, and they have things that are tied back to the Fort Wayne Wizards. But one of the things they actually have are the Fort Wayne Colored Giants. So, which is a collection they have. They have a number of different items that you can get that with kind of their version of the Fort Wayne Giants logo. So, which, by the way, you can get for 15% off with the code BATTERS on their website. But I wanted to know, do you know anything about the Fort Wayne Colored Giants that you could maybe share with us? I know we've got some local fans. even
Well,
maybe a short anecdote.
Yeah, no. I get what I picking up what you're putting down. You're like, hey, let's make this one a little snappier, Alex. And I understand that. So if you go to Parkview Field, they've actually got a marker there. I don't know if y'all have seen it, but they've got a really nice one picture survives of the team, and it's really quite a fantastic picture. So the Fort Wayne Colored Giants were the team throughout most of the 20s. They were owned by a guy named Moses Taylor, and really played mostly in Fort Wayne, but would kind of travel. I know they'd go to like Kendallville sometimes and Ligonier, and so they mostly played in Fort Wayne. But really, what I will say is that the Fort Wayne Colored Giants they're kind of an example of the fact that like black baseball teams were fraught with financial insecurity. So the team's on their way to Pittsburgh for like a big tournament, and they're going to play some Pittsburgh teams. Their bus breaks down, and instead of fixing the bus and coming home to Fort Wayne, all the players, including the owner Moses Taylor, just stayed in Pittsburgh and made a life out there. Like, the fact that the trip from Pittsburgh to Fort Wayne would have been insurmountable for these guys, that's terrible. So so they unfortunately stopped pretty abruptly. The Colored Giants did. And then I would just bring up another team called the Colored Pirates. There was a guy named B. Selden, who was a Van Wert guy, believe it or not, born in Van Wert, buried in Van Wert. A great guy to research. He was part of some really good early black ball teams. But the Colored Giants have left an indelible mark as probably the most noteworthy black baseball team out of Fort Wayne. And go buy their gear, by the way. Yeah.
Adam was trying to talk, but he was muted.
Oh.
Beers.
Hey, Alex, real quick. We got a question. I just wanted to bring this up. Who you got?
Oh man, I knew someone was going to do this.
That's an unfair question.
That is so unfair.
No, leave it to Logan.
Can you have both? I'd love both.
So just to read it for the audio only audience, the question that Logan is posing is Josh Gibson or Babe Ruth? Sorry if you have answered, which we have not, but we've talked a little bit about Josh Gibson. We haven't mentioned the Babe yet, but I know personally Alex is a huge fan of both.
I love Babe Ruth because he was also he was very excessive. Everything he did was big. If he ate one hot dog, he ate 15. If he drank one soda, he drank 12. He had a voracious appetite for everything, including home runs.
And cigars.
And if you were to believe legend, Lou Gehrig's wife. But anyways,
really?
That's why Babe and Lou were like this, and then all of a sudden they weren't, and it's been widely surmised it's probably because Babe was kind of a charlatan, man. They say he wooed Eleanor Gehrig. Anyways, wow. Yes, yeah. I wouldn't even. And only after Lou, towards the end of his life, he forgave Babe, and Babe felt really bad about it. Whatever actually happened. Okay, so back to the question, Logan. I appreciate it. Josh Gibson or Babe Ruth. I mean, they both hit for high average. They both hit a ton of home runs. I mean, you know what? I'm here. It's got to be. I'll take Josh Gibson. I mean, yeah.
The man had balls because when they would again, I can't get over when he said that was a rude comparison. Because Babe Ruth is a white version of me.
Yeah. Well, and you know what else?
That is a risky thing to say back in the day.
And another thing he said that is verified is, someone said, Josh, like what happens? Like, how do you change your plate approach when someone's in scoring position? And he just looked at him and said, I'm in scoring position when I get to the plate. And I was like, ooh, I like that. Well,
no, the man had kahunas on him.
Yeah.
And like this is a kahunas.
Kahunas. There you go.
Kahunas, whatever.
We know what you're saying, Bo. Yeah.
Jordan doesn't know how to pronounce Corey Kluber either.
Anyway, you haters. So I have a question that may be difficult to answer, but I'm going to ask anyway.
All right.
What Negro player would have dominated or played well in today's baseball?
That's a good question. I mean, like I want to say easily Oscar Charleston because he was a 5-tool player, but I'm going to bring up someone different in the spirit of the World Baseball Classic. Okay.
There you go.
There was a 5-tool player and he could pitch. His name was El Maestro, Martin Dihigo. Okay. He batted .312 against he batted .312 in the Negro Leagues over his long career. He actually managed to bat higher against white major league competition. He played every position. He pitched, and he's the only player in baseball history. Hold on, just so if you got pearls, let's clutch them for a moment here. He's in 5 different Hall of Fames, and actually I had to write them down because I didn't want to forget a single one. He's of course in Cooperstown because he was that good. Martin Dihigo. He's in the Mexican Baseball Hall of Fame. He's in the Venezuelan Baseball Hall of Fame. He's in the Cuban Baseball Hall of Fame, and he's in the Dominican Republic Baseball Hall of Fame.
Wow.
He's one of the best baseball players who has ever breathed. When you're looking at just like versatility, he played everything. El Maestro, man, Martin.
Oh
Dihigo.
my gosh, how have I? That's sad that I've never heard of him, but
It's okay. No, I mean he he was in. There was a large group of Negro Leaguers that were inducted in 2006. He was among that group, which was awesome. But he kind of played. He was among those guys who played everywhere. So Martin Dihigo, he was unbelievable.
that's amazing.
I mean, yeah.
Did he play catcher too?
Oh, he played everything. He didn't play catcher very
when you're
much. Yeah,
saying
he played some. Yeah, I mean, he played everything. He played everything.
Oh, he would have been perfect for fantasy.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And can you imagine that guy like first base, second base? He played everything. And also, like, I know we're talking about big bases now. We're talking about big bases, and we're going to see an increase in stolen bases this year, hopefully. Hey, I got to give it up for a guy named Sam Jethro. They called him the Jet. They said he was so fast he could outrun the word of God. Okay, so this guy was so good. Now, something else about Sam the Jet Jethro. He was the National League Rookie of the Year in 1950. Okay, so what people didn't realize about him is that he was actually 33 years old. The papers had him at 28. His baseball cards had him at 28. He led the league in stolen bases his first and second years. But so the fastest guy for a 90-foot split last year, I can't remember who it was. Corbin. No.
Was it Castro?
Corbin Carroll?
Yes, thank you. Corbin. Does he play for the Diamondbacks?
Yeah.
Yeah. His fastest 90-foot split was 3.66 seconds. And Sam the Jet Jethro was timed in 1950 from going from home to first in 3.6 seconds. So now, granted, that was with a stopwatch. So stopwatches skew a little bit quicker because of the delay. But if you were to pluck that guy and put him in, Sam Jethro played for the Cleveland Buckeyes for a long time and then made the successful transition to Major League Baseball, immediately leading the league in stolen bases, becoming Rookie of the Year, but doing it 5 years older than anyone else thought he was. Imagine that one.
Sorry, just to go back to a question. How did you pronounce Corey Kluber, Jordan?
All right, so since I know really how to say it now, let me go back to the video. I got Corey Kubler.
I just love it. It's great.
Hey, at least I didn't back down, you know.
No,
Rob, did you notice that in the video?
Clue.
Because I guess let me just do a quick backstory on the video. Did you notice he mispronounced it, Rob?
No.
Oh, because you know we've got a little Inglorious Batters group chat, and you know Jordan was just sending us his little video that he made, which was very well done, by the way. Awesome. Jordan's great at editing,
Yes.
and he had a cool background where he had his actual team listed behind him from like the app. And I was listening to it. He goes, "Hey guys, what do you guys think? I'm about to post it." And I'm like, "Oh hell!" You know, I listened to it and I heard he said Kubler and stuff. I'm like, "Oh hell yeah, post it."
Oh man!
Like that was that just a slip, or did you really think it was Kubler?
I actually thought it was Kubler.
Oh,
Hey, man.
shit.
Well, at least I wouldn't admit that. So you're better than me. And I mispronounce names all the time. Adam can attest.
You get to know me. I don't care. I don't get embarrassed. I don't have any sort of fear when it comes down to making fun of myself. So who cares?
No, man.
I get
it's
it.
all good. It's all
you
good.
gotta roll with it, you roll with it as it goes.
I embrace it. My wife hates it.
They're supposed to hate everything we do.
Yeah, I know. They're probably like
truism.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Alex, I guess my last question, and I'll turn it over, see if any of them have any other questions. With your schedule and how busy you are, you coach your kids, you do have a full-time job, and you have, I don't know how many different hobbies, but and you're also a podcaster yourself. You have your own podcast. Where is it that you find the motivation to kind of continue your research, albeit maybe some of the most unknown topics in baseball, but where is it that you find that motivation, and what are some of the biggest obstacles or frustrations that you come across during the process? And I guess the final question is where do you find fulfillment in all of this?
Right. Dude, I actually appreciate this question because I will tell you this much. And again, I said it earlier, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to gas myself up, but oftentimes what I do is very, very isolating. Like it's very, it's just me and my computer screen and my notepad. And like the victories that you win while doing this are oftentimes just you. And so, and I'll tell you this much, man, when I was doing my one of my previous books about baseball here in Richmond, sometimes I would research into the early hours of the morning, and like I'd get emotional. And, and I'm not afraid to admit that I would discover things. I discovered games. I'd see people came through this humble city of Richmond, Indiana, and I would actually get emotional. I have no shame in admitting that, but really it's really kind of a treatise in staying intrinsically motivated and buying into what you're trying to find so much that you are willing to kind of sacrifice a lot of time. You're willing to kind of face it is truly isolating. And you realize that you just owe it to your subjects. My goal is to get Bill Holland in the Baseball Hall of Fame. Okay. And I have spent countless hours trying to find every nook and cranny, trying to find a win just anywhere for him, because I want to get him to 300 wins. And so one of the frustrating parts is sometimes you see in the newspaper, they'll take a week to promote a game every single day. Hey, the Black Yankees are coming to town to play the blah, blah, blah. And they spend a week promoting it. And then they don't report the final score. And you're like, what the hell is this? You're like, you're kidding. You can't do this to me. Like, you follow it. And like, that's the thing is you kind of find your little inseam, and then you just kind of start grabbing onto it and pulling it. And then there's nothing at the bound. You're like, dude, no way. So that's one of the things that is.
Gary, the beat writer, came down with polio.
Exactly. No, exactly, man. Like typhoid fever or, anything, the runs. I don't know. I'm like, how do we promote this game every day like clockwork and then fail to tell us how? That's not common, but like it happens enough. I found, almost 500 games that Bill pitched. So most of the time that doesn't happen, but oftentimes it does. So, I mean, that's one thing is like just kind of working through that, and like kind of like it can be very deflating to like kind of hit a wall, or it can be very deflating when you're like, dude, Bill has given up 18 runs over his last 4 starts. And it's like, next thing you know, you're like, what gives? So, I mean, it's just like when you're trying to construct a narrative, it's almost like you're living through it again. And I always do it chronologically. So I try to do it like just one swing with the guy. And I'm like, come on, Bill, like we're not doing so well right now. So yeah, that's just it. Staying intrinsically motivated, dealing with kind of what can be very an isolating hobby, but also sharing out success. Adam, you catch my anecdotes quite frequently, as do you, Jordan and Rob, just in the group message. I'll just kind of start spouting. But just kind of rolling with the punches and trying to, again, you gotta find it in here.
Yeah, absolutely, man. You guys have anything else for Alex before we ask him to plug?
Yeah, to kind of piggyback on that, when I was reading through your book, I noticed.
Thank you, Rob. By the way, you're one of just dozens of people. And it's like what Tom Hanks said in Da Vinci Code when someone said, "Oh, I bought your book at the bookstore." You're like, "Oh, you're one of dozens of people." Yeah. So thank you.
Oh no, it's been a pleasure reading.
Alex, in your defense, in your defense, Alex, this is a rough draft of your new book. So
thank you.
So
actually, you're the first. Yeah, actually.
Yeah. Oh, so you look at that.
Yeah.
I don't remember who you were talking about though. You were talking about a guy played for the Iowa Stars, and you were trying, and you were actually just walking through that whole entire process of how you were trying to connect him to a game. You were trying to connect him to the team, and you finally found it. Can you expound upon that a little bit? Just how much joy did you have at that moment where you just said, like, my months of research just paid off?
Rob, I really appreciate this. There was a black team in the Vincennes, Indiana area. They were called the Idaho Stars. And yes, no, you got it though. I appreciate it. So I was looking for something completely different. And then I found it said, like, there was a headline, a very small article that said colored ball player killed in a bar fight. And as I kind of started digging, I saw that there was a gentleman. His name was Roy Beard. He was a Vincennes native. He went into a bar. He wasn't served. He was refused service. And so he said something to the bartender, and the bartender just blew him away, killed him. And so, but it said colored ball player. So that's what really kind of got me curious. And I'm like, what team did he play for? And I'm like, who could he have possibly played for? He's in Vincennes. I mean, remote. And so I found out finally that there was this black baseball team called the Idaho Stars around the turn of the century in Vincennes. I'm like, oh, that's great. I'm like, maybe this guy Roy Beard played for the Idaho Stars. And it took me just digging and hours and hours and hours. And finally, I found some box scores that had him playing right field for the Idaho Stars, R. Beard. And I was like, I can't get over it. I couldn't believe it. I was just elated. And to be able to tell that guy's story. I mean, he seems like he was a great ball player. Unfortunately, and again, not to skew like too much into the social realm, but this guy who blew Roy Beard away was, acquitted after like 20 minutes. He killed someone in cold blood, but he was acquitted. And there was like kind of a small riot outside the jail because this guy, Roy, was a very popular guy. And it was during the state fair or the county fair at that time. So just Rob, thank you for bringing up Roy and Vincennes. I appreciate that. Like, that's just one of those stories I tried to really localize. And I kind of know the rough approximation where Roy lives. So if I ever make it to Vincennes, I'm heading there. But just like pure elation.
I was going to ask you, like, if do the people of Vincennes, like the historical societies around there, do they understand that there was actually a black baseball team that played there called the Idaho Stars?
So I don't believe so. I've never seen.
That's crazy.
I've never seen the Idaho Stars documented anywhere.
That's stupid.
And there was a blog article that there was a few sentences about them, and that's all I really found. So then it just became like, pouring through newspaper, trying to figure out like, what were these guys about? I finally figured out that, like the Harlem Globetrotters were from Chicago. They called themselves the Harlem Globetrotters because they wanted people to think they were like this big outfit from out of town and well-traveled. So I assume that's what the Idaho Stars did. I'm like, oh, maybe they're convincing people they're from like this far distant state. But I found out Idaho was actually a black neighborhood in Vincennes, was the black neighborhood in Vincennes, and they were the Idaho Stars. I don't think anybody knows about the Idaho Stars. Yeah. So it's like one of those things I'm like, oh, maybe we can spread some awareness here.
Yeah, and I know that you work with the Sabre community, correct?
I do, yes. So fingers crossed. Keep your fingers crossed for it, fellas. The Negro Leagues conference is in July in Detroit, and they asked for Detroit Stars related proposals. So you better believe I'm shooting my shot for Bill Holland, the former Detroit Star. So maybe I get picked to do a session there. That'd be great. So
and the sickest uniforms in the Negro League.
Super sick.
Well,
Super sick. Thank you. Yeah.
I wish I knew more about them.
The Detroit
That's all right,
Stars.
Jordan.
That's all good. Hey, just Google the Detroit Stars 1920. They've got these
I've been
really
writing notes.
I'm glad. Yeah.
Oh, I've been seeing him. Right, notes. I noticed you were writing there, Jordan.
If you happen to see the
That's awesome,
guy
man.
standing on the far left side, back row, that's Bill Holland, only 19 years old at that time, and just a scrappy SOB.
So, Alex, we're getting to that about that magic number.
We
I
are.
guess before we get you out of here and before we get out of here, you got any? We talked a little bit about your future book, but what are some of your current projects? Whether it's a blog, future projects. Tell us a little bit about your podcast and
Much obliged.
Yeah.
I got 3 things, and I'll cover them really quick because I know I'm a windy individual, and you guys, I guess we've all experienced that one tonight. If you're ever in Richmond, Indiana, there is a marker in Richmond, Indiana for Negro Leagues baseball. I designed it. I fundraised for it, and I worked with the Parks and Rec and the mayor's office. If you're ever in Richmond, please let me know because I will personally show you this marker. I'm very, very proud of it. It captures a little bit of the history of the area, and it's directly across the street from where this old magnificent ballpark used to stand. So that's one. 2, so there's a gentleman named Newt Allen. He was a great second baseman for those Kansas City Monarch teams for almost over 2 decades. Newt Allen, another great ball player, one of the best second basemen, if not the best second baseman in the Negro Leagues. I'm on a small committee we're doing a headstone dedication for him in Cincinnati on Jackie Robinson Day, April 15th, 2023. And basically, guy was buried. He died in 1988. He was buried without a headstone. And not only that, there was a small group of people, not me, so I can't take credit for this, who actually found where he was buried and raised the funds to get him a headstone. So I've jumped on the process to kind of help with marketing and doing some research and kind of putting some know-how, not to mention Cincinnati's not too terribly far from Richmond. So there is that. Newt Allen, look him up too if you're curious about other Negro League stars, and he's getting a headstone. And man, I'm so happy. Like, it's depressing how many Negro League baseball stars don't have headstones. I'll just leave that one there. And then 3rd, thank you. I do podcast myself. I'm a huge Notre Dame football fan, but as you might imagine, I'm also a bit of a nerdy individual. I know, Jordan. I know. But however, I was going to say, Jordan, you are outnumbered in this room. So at least there's that.
I support a winning college football team, so we're good.
Oh.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter because we're all Irish on St. Patrick's Day.
That's so true, though. This is very appropriate. So it's called Onward to Victory, a Notre Dame football podcast. I tend to do deep dive storytelling about various aspects of the program and the university. So, yeah, it's not like because there are better people to talk about the current iteration of the Irish than me, much better. I don't miss a game, but I don't do a lot of the day-to-day stuff. I always look back. I never look forward. So Onward to Victory, a Notre Dame football podcast. That's my 3rd.
Excellent, man. Yeah, it's I can vouch. His basically what if you want a podcast that is basically what our episode 3 was, which was awesome anecdotes and stories that are just completely and utterly unknown and not reported on. And that's what you're going to get with Onward to Victory football podcast, because he tells some stories that are absolutely insane. And as Notre Dame football fans, it just some of the history, the program's so historic, but you don't really know how historic it is until you start really learning more about it. So,
right.
So, yeah.
That's the beautiful thing
man.
about history in general is you never know exactly what it is you're getting yourself into.
Exactly.
You can look up, I don't know, one character out of a movie and then do a whole entire family genealogy deep dive on everything that man's ever touched. So, I mean, history in general. And Alex, thank you for being such a, proponent for it and preaching to the world, about the beauties that nobody else is able to. So
thanks, Rob. I appreciate it. And, I do some middle school. I do a lot of school, not a lot, but I've done school groups before. But that's what I'll tell anyone, man, embrace the rabbit hole. Just embrace it.
Oh yeah.
Like, it might be endless, but that's okay, man. Just keep going.
Yeah. And you're going to find 1,000 different things that when you're down that rabbit hole. It's like a little multiverse. You're going to have all sorts of different things that are going to pop up, and then you're going to want to learn about that, and you're going to want to absorb it all. So
Right. No, exactly. And yeah, Jim, I've heard of the Negro League's baseball grade marker project, and that's actually who helped with the Newt Allen. And there's 7 guys that I have found in Indianapolis without headstones. So I've actually submitted them to that. So maybe they get funded at some point, get headstones. But no, the Negro League's baseball grade marker project they're also doing God's work. They're fantastic.
when do you sleep?
Man. Yeah.
Dude, I don't know.
You got like 17
honestly.
jobs plus a family plus.
I know. Actually, yeah, my real job, I work in private philanthropy and community development. No, I just here's actually my secret. And Adam knows that I like say this, but I kind of get high and mighty about it. I don't actually watch TV anymore. I don't watch. I'm so behind on shows, and the only thing I watch anymore is Notre Dame football and Cleveland baseball. So that's it.
Not even your fantasy team?
I don't watch. If it's not my favorite teams, I don't really watch sports. I don't watch. Yeah, it's kind of.
But he does watch PBS Kids.
I do. Yes, indeed.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm raising my kids to be Amish, so that's the only thing they get to watch.
I've been watching a lot of Bluey.
Oh yeah,
Bluey rocks. That's a good show.
Jim asked how much is needed to fund a headstone. It's typically around about $1,000. Can get you a flat stone. Of course, you can get the ones that elevate a little higher, but those are a little pricier. But your kind of base is $1,000 traditionally.
Okay.
Yeah,
So,
I apologize, fellas. I know.
you're good, man. No, you're good.
You're perfect.
You're
You're perfect. I just wanted to just make an announcement before we do our outro. Is that on Monday you're going to see the Bastards on the 7th inning stretch for the full MLB preview. You don't want to miss it. You're gonna witness us be selected. Certain teams that we're going to have to force to support for the first half of the season. It's going to be a great show. Highly recommend you guys tuning in. We're only going to be on for like 20 minutes, but don't know when yet. But we'll be on.
Right on.
And then next week we have a Inglorious Batters episode where we're going to go deep into our draft.
Right on.
Alex, real quick.
Yes.
How's the Rose City Riveters?
I'm not feeling great, guys. I'll be honest. Hey, I'll be honest. I'm not feeling great. I even told Adam before. I'm like, dude, don't ask me anything about modern baseball. I feel like I'm just like so lackluster at this point. I did get a runner-up last year, but that's in a 20-team league. That is awful impressive, I guess. But Adam did win the thing. Hey, can I enter one thing for posterity to the show here?
Yeah.
So Jay's been calling me. He's been tuned in. Jay Valentine, again, the supremely talented center fielder of the Indianapolis Clowns from 1976 through 1977. Something I didn't mention either is he went down to spring training with the New York Yankees in the spring instructional league. So guy's awesome. But he just said, thanks to Adam, Rob, and Jordan. You guys rock. He says, love you, brother. Thanks for the props. Great podcast and more stories to come from Jay.
Awesome, Jay.
Sweet.
We appreciate that, man.
Join the cast. We'd love to have you on.
Yeah.
He has got so many amazing stories, and he's a
amazing.
hoot and a holler, and I can't wait to see him again. I'm going to squeeze him, but yeah, thanks for letting me share that.
Absolutely, and thank you for being on with us. We appreciate it. We'll have to do it again sometime.
Please do.
All right, Rob. Safe travels back home. And
Thanks.
Jordan.
All right.
Yeah, and thanks for having me on,
All right,
fellas. By
guys.
the way, I appreciate it.
Thanks again, Alex.
Thank you for everything. Thank you, Alex. And see you guys
Thank
next
you.
Friday. Well, technically Monday. You get the idea. See ya.